Most people, they think, well, I don't ride the rails. The Railroad Commission seems pretty abstract.
Sure.
It doesn't involve my life. Why is the Railroad Commission of any interest to me?
Well, first we have to change that name, obviously. The Railroad Commission, as it was founded, was actually created as one of the first consumer advocacy agencies in the country, as a matter of fact. And at that time, in the 1800s, I think 1897 or something like that, what happened was that the railroad industry was kind of barreling its way through the state of Texas. And it caused a lot of issues with how it related to the residents who lived there. So lo and behold, the legislature at the time felt it was necessary to create an agency that protected the interest of residents in Texas, Texans, rural Texans. We've kind of come a long way from that day. We've come from being a consumer advocacy agency to being a industry facilitator for whatever they pretty much want. And so, what I want to do, and I think this is how it impacts the lives of everyday Texans, is kind of bring more balance back to that agency, making sure that we rediscover our roots as a consumer advocate, but at the same time help to create the jobs that the state needs and the economy that is flourishing as a result of the oil and gas production.
Well, again, we're in an era of deregulation or even anti-regulation. And seeing on one of your statements was just that you're here to get the RRC to operate as it was intended.
Right.
How is it not operating that way now?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the intention was to protect consumers. And in this case, at the very origin of the agency, instead of big oil, it was big railroads at that time. And so the agency can still serve that purpose, to be an advocate for rural Texans, to be an advocate for rural Texas consumers, whether it is with regards to the price of natural gas, because as you know, this agency does regulate the natural gas prices, but also in terms of public safety and how we work with the environment and work with the public and community to keep them safe, at the same time achieving our goals to create some energy independence in the globe.
It's the number one thing that's on everybody's mind in terms of what the Railroad Commission does. Or should we just call it the Energy Commission? I mean, what would be the appropriate name?
I think Energy Commission is fine. I think Energy Resources Commission is fine as well. There should be some kind of energy in the name of the actual agency. If not Energy, Oil and Gas Commission or something like that. I think there are a lot of states that actually go by the State Oil and Gas Commission. So I'm open to any of those things, anything but railroad. I do understand and appreciate that in the early stages of the agency, a lot of oil was transported by railroad, which is why we have jurisdiction over that natural resource. But today, that's not necessarily the case anymore. And so the agency should reflect what it is it actually regulates.
Now, we're in the middle of this enormous boom that nobody would have foreseen 15 years ago, much less 10 years ago.
Right.
It's transforming Texas. Other states have said this looks great, but we're going to look before we leap. What is the current status in terms of the unknowns? What are the what are the knowable unknowns out there that we, for some reason, haven't come around to know about yet?
Well, I think what we know is that oil and gas production is very lucrative. It's a very lucrative enterprise. That is the one sure known. The unknowns is the sustainability of that development. And will we have a Texas 20 years from now, 40 years from now, 50 years from now, or a century from now that resembles the Texas we have today? Should that be better or for worse? I think that knowingly going into situations where we don't know the true long-term effects of what we're doing is a wrong-sided approach to public policy making in general. And that theory goes past and transcends what we're talking about with the Railroad Commission. I think that fundamentally what we've seen for the past 2 decades is a short-term, a short-visioned approach to public policy making, whether that's with education or healthcare. And in my case, with oil and gas regulation, we have a hard time as a state seeing past a 2-year clip or 2-year cycle. In order for this state to remain great, we have to be a bit more visionary in our approach to how we deal with not only how we extract these resources out of the ground, but the unintended consequences that are related to that extraction, and to find out ways where we can mitigate those unintended consequences. The problem with not acknowledging that we don't know everything is that we then don't fix anything. And so I'm not of the mindset that we're at a point where we can throw it, the baby out with the bathwater. I do think that there are aspects of drilling, and whether it's fracking or what have you, that do have unintended consequences. But those unintended consequences can be fixed or mitigated if we at least acknowledge the fact that those unintended consequences exist.